But my goal is to just show like the routing, how I do approach the routing and gain structure and stuff, and it can be applied to any console. So anyway, my general approach is to kind of set up the inputs sort of first for the live streaming in a way, like have really good solid levels. I'm gaining them up so that like things are hitting, you know, at hitting like -18, so or above. You know, I'm gaining things up so they're like that. You know, and if it's a digital input, I use the digital gains. You know, to get them you know between -18 and -12, and then that way, if I push it up to 0, and I have my stereo at 0, that's going to be a good level for records or live streaming. So that's good. So let me mute the PA. So yeah. So now, why does this look? Oh, huh. Okay. So now if you see the meters, that's kind of what I'm looking for levels in general. So if I sent this to the speakers, it would be way too loud. So then and then generally I'm sending everything to a subgroup. All my inputs go to a subgroup, and I'll have a subgroup for podium, lavalier, handheld. This is for a corporate event. This is like every friggin' show I do the exact same way. Podium, lav, handheld. Even if I don't have a headset mics, you know, those are the 4 different types of mics. I have a subgroup for each type, and then I have a stereo playback subgroup, and then an extra stereo subgroup for DJ or band or whatever. So, and then I use those subgroups are how I set my levels to the PA. And then the subgroups are sent to matrices, and the matrices feed the speakers, all the speaker zones. So there'll be a left-right, or there'll be a left-right sub and front fill, or whatever. There'll be 2 to 4. Yes. So then, yeah. So the record is like nice hot signal, and then the you know, my subgroups 1 through, and I'll actually do it in a minute. My subgroups, I'm starting from all the way down, and like I have my mic full, you know, the fader up at 0 for the mic, and then I'll bring the subgroup up until it sounds right in the PA, and then that's where it lives.
So your subgroups are only feeding the PA. You're not using those
Right.
to record.
Right. That's right. Some people do that. They'll send like their subgroups to a matrix to record, but I don't think that makes sense. But I mean, generally everybody everybody has some version of this approach, right? So you need to have the Dugan on the input for sure. I would put the primary source enhancer on the subgroup. Anyway, I always do 8 subgroups, because that takes care of 99.9% of the shows that we do. And then for matrices, like if you do left, right subs and front fill, if you don't have a DSP like a Galileo or something, you might chew up a lot of matrices. That's why we also need to revise more matrices. and then the records I sent to different matrices for that are specifically go to those recorders or encoding computers or whatever. So let me just do it. So how I start out is first I go to setup, bus setup, and then I make 1 through 8 fixed, and I make 5 and 6 stereo, 7 and 8 stereo, and then this is how I do it. I make mix 9 and 10 my record mix. So there's two ways to do it here. I just do it this way out of habit. You could just assign your inputs to the stereo bus, and that's your record, right? Or when I say record, I'm talking about live stream also. So you could just assign your inputs to the left, right, and that's your record. I use the mix 9 and 10 stereo as the record, and then assign that to the stereo. Just because, like, once in a while, I'm gonna go, oh, I need those louder. For some reason, like Q&A mics always need to be a little louder to the records. So I can just go to that mix, and and I can just, so I'll just set up that mix as everything at 0. But then, the handheld mics anymore, I'll just turn them up 5 dB. Just the handheld mics into that mix. So that's why I do that. And then 11 is my foldback. 12 is backstage monitors. I always do a separate thing for backstage monitors. Sometimes 13, I used to do this all the time, but I haven't been lately for some reason. 13 is a pre-fader to another Fostex for who's ever doing playback or graphics, so that they can cue things up and not have to, ask for it or whatever. I usually give them a separate monitor that's pre-fader, that's just their playback pre-fader. And then 15 and 16 I usually use as a record to, it would be a pre-fader record mix to my QLab machine or whatever. So if I want to record VOGs or something. So that's how I set up the buses. So the first 8 are fixed. Everything else is regular, auxes, right? I set up my output ports. If I'm using the Omni outputs, I would do like so I'm looking at the Omni outputs right now. These are the XLR outputs on the back of the console. So one would be matrix 1, so which would be left. 2 is matrix 2, that's right. 3 is matrix 3, subs. 4, front fills. 5, this one, 5 would be, if I have 16, I do it a little different if I have 16 Omni outputs or if I have a Rio box. But generally, there's one for foldback. 6, I'll make the backstage monitor. So this is assuming I have 8 outputs on the console and I'm using an analog snake. 7 is going to be my record mix on this console. So it'll be left and 8 right. That's it. I've used all the matrices now. So, you could really use more. This console is not enough for sort of a show with, with live streaming and other stuff. But you can add, what we do sometimes, and I think we're going to buy some more, is you can add 4 more analog XLR outputs to give you 12, and then that would take care of most shows. Yeah, it depends on the show. If a Rio makes things easier, you got more outputs, or and you don't have to run an analog snake. Yes. Yeah, so you could send, so your live stream and your Zoom callers could be over Dante using the Avio, the Avio adapters. You could do those, and that gives you more outputs using Dante rather than the analog outputs, right? So then 3, 4, and 5. Subs, front fills, and foldback. And when and then I'm gonna really set up the whole console. Oh, and then I'll save a file and give you the file, actually. One thing I do right at the beginning when I'm setting up the console is I take everything out of the stereo, because they go to the stereo bus by default. So I take everything out. So I hit the pan button, and now I can see all the channels in groups of 8, and I just go whoop. Sometimes it works like that. I take them all the input channels I take out of the stereo bus, like that. And then I label them. So I'll label all the inputs. And lately I've been starting with the wireless mics, and then doing that, then the wired mics after, for some reason. I think it kind of, oops. All right, and then 9 is podium. Oops. 10, podium. And 11 be, let's say, playback 1. 12 is playback 1. What?
This is a very noisy HVAC system in this studio.
No kidding. You don't say. All right. So then so the playback sources I make pink. You can make them whatever color you want. You know, we're gonna talk about cedar, and then I combine my stereo channels in stereo. This one. Okay, this one's going to be. This one's going to be my Mac.
All the playback stuff is perfect.
All right. So, and then you can keep going. Like usually, there's graphics. There's. I've been instead of doing PB1 lately, I'm starting to do VT1 and VT2, because Playback is Playback Pro, and we don't use Playback Pro anymore. And we do use QLab, but I also use QLab. So if I label it QLab, that's me. If I label it VT, that's video playback, right? Videotape. So I've been doing VT sometimes. So it's either I do either PB or VT. I don't know. So I didn't either, but like there was just one. It was probably some show where it was like they had Playback Pro and there was something else, and I got confused. So I was like, I'm not using that anymore. I don't know.
But videotape is accurate.
Yes, we're using
Different
video.
older playback software that was V something.
Oh,
No, it was software.
vMix.
No, it was for playback. It was pre-pandemic.
Don't
worry about it.
I don't remember. All right. So so now I labeled the inputs. I'm gonna go. I go into all these auxes and set them up to all post, except the one that's the pre-fader for. 15 and 16 is going to be. Whoops. 15 and 16 is going to be pre, because that's feeding that's feeding my recorder. So like somebody could do a VOG, and it'll be pre and won't go to the speakers. So I've labeled my inputs. I'm going to label the outputs. Mix 1 through 8 is the subgroups, and they're not going to any outputs. I'm just going to label them. So I got podium, lav. What?
Don't forget to color them.
I leave these orange.
No.
Playback left. Playback right. Whoops. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. This one is head.
No, all the things that go to physical outputs that make sound need to be green.
Well, okay. Oops. Right. And then 7 and 8 are going to be are going to be DJ left and DJ right. Whoops. Right. And those are stereo. Tell me if my head gets in the way. Oh, you can't see the faders. So those ones are stereo, playback, and then those ones. And these ones I leave down until I start to put them into the PA. That's how I'm going to start putting them into the PA. All right. Oh yeah, 9 and 10 are record. I label it record, even if it's a live stream. I just label those records. You can label them whatever you want. Fold back. So 11 fold. This is just. I always do it the same way every time, just to kind of because I'm used to it. And I don't even. Most of the time, I don't even load a console file because I just set it up this way just quickly. But I might start using a console file again. All right, fold back 12. BS is backstage. 13. This would be pre-fade for the. Also another. Let's say 14 will be zoom. Okay. So that's going to be a mix minus for a Zoom caller. And then 15 is going to be Mac. So that'll be my Mac, left and right. Oops. And then that's in stereo also. Sorry for my head. That's in stereo. This one's in stereo. The rest are in mono. Okay.
Stuff like this, I really like to use the offline editor, but in online mode because it just makes doing your nip patch naming that much faster.
Yeah. And on with yeah, I know. I rarely ever use the console manager. Rarely. I was playing with the Rivage one. It's pretty cool. It has a lot of stuff, man. It's amazing. So let's see. So we're gonna make this one zoom.
I'm shocked he hasn't gotten one yet.
All right, that one's zoom. So now, and then I'm gonna pull all the matrices down. I would just leave them up if I'm using a Galaxy or something, but if they're actually feeding the speakers directly, I'll pull them down before I do anything with them. And then I'll just start with them at like -10 or something. Because usually we just have way more headroom than we need on these shows. But yeah, if you have a band, you got to watch out because I've accidentally handed the console to a band's engineer, and I had done my gain structure based on what I always do, and it was and so they start clipping the inputs because I didn't give them enough headroom. So yeah, you gotta watch out for that. So I'm labeling the outputs sub, front fill. What else do we say? But that's coming out of mix 11. So for matrices, all right, I'm going to do stream, and that's just going to be a stereo one, and record. All right, is that all we need? Yeah. And those are in mono. Sometimes I'll leave those in mono because it makes it easier to like mute left and right and just to test things. Yeah, I'll just leave them in mono and just send the left to the left and the right to the right. You got to do two things instead of one thing. So then, so I've labeled all my outputs. I have patched them, right? So yeah, I did the output patching. I've labeled all the inputs and I've labeled all the outputs. Oh yeah, we don't have enough physical outputs on this thing to do separate stream and records. So I could just pretend we have a card in the slot and make that the stream. So that'll just come from 5 and 6. Okay. So now the record mix is coming from the stereo, and it's going to 7 and 8, Omni 7 and 8, and the live stream is coming from Matrix 5 and 6, and it's coming out of slot 1, channel 1 and 2. So that's like that's kind of generally all the inputs and outputs on a ballroom show, right? I didn't make all the inputs. I didn't make a DJ input, even though I have a DJ subgroup. But so then now I'm just going to get everything sent to where it needs to go. So I'm starting with my podium. So the first 8 are subgroups. Remember, they're fixed. So I'm just using the on buttons. So podium, lavalier, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The lavaliers, handheld, 7 and 8. Headset, I don't have any. I'm just going to skip that. Playback is going to be playback 1, playback 2, my Mac, and Zoom, because for the speakers, Zoom, I'm treating the incoming Zoom caller as just another playback source. And then DJ is going to be 1920. I didn't label it. Record, the way I do records, instead of like pushing all the faders up, I go to channel job, mix minus, and and then record, and I don't select any channels, so it'll just send every channel to record. Okay, so now if I look at the record mix, everything's going there. Everything's going to records. Okay, makes sense. Oh, I forgot to do audience mics, because I want to show something that I do with those. Right. All right. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to make 21 and 22 audience mics. Whoops. All right, and I'm going to make those green because those are only going to the live stream. I'm going to make them stereo, and then I'm going to assign them to the stereo bus, and I'm going to pan them left and right. All right, so those are the audience mics. And if you look at the assignments here, they're not going to any subgroups. They're only going to the record. They're not going to the fallback. They're not going backstage. They're going nowhere except the records. That's it. And the pan follows the pan that I did to the stereo bus. So that's the audience mics. And usually I'll high pass them very high too, like that. And I'm going to make sure all these are not. So that's not going to the stereo. That would be double busing. So it's going to my record mix, and remember my record mix, which I forgot to do, is going to the stereo. So where is it? Here's record, and you don't have to do it this way. This is just my weird thing I do. So I have a mix, an aux mix for records, and my record. When I say records, I'm talking about recording and live streaming. They get the same mix. But I use an aux for that, and then send that aux to the stereo left-right. So my stereo left-right is my record mix. So you don't have to use an aux. You can just assign all your inputs to the stereo left-right. That's fine. But I just like to be able to have a little extra adjustment for the record mix. And if somebody's quiet in the room, and I can't get them loud enough because of gain before feedback, I can boost them up in the records at least. Stuff like that. So I always do that. And then the records, I just leave. They just stay like that all the time. And I have to send them to stereo bus. Can you see that? Do you see what I did? Yeah. Oh yeah, out a little bit. That's a good idea. You're going to see my head too. Sorry. So the subgroups I'm leaving down their feed because they're like the last thing I want to bring up to get it to send it to the speakers as I'm checking things. Also foldback, I'm going to leave that all the way down, and I'm going to bring the sends up to 0, and then bring up foldback until it's the right volume, and that's usually kind of low with what we're doing here. The backstage monitors I'll put up at 0, but sometimes that might be too much too. So maybe bring the backstage monitors up to -10. The Zoom call I could just leave at 0. The pre-fade I could leave at 0 or -10. The Mac I could put at 0. That's feeding my MacBook Pro that has QLab on it. So I could put that at 0. The stereo I'll put at 0. Okay. Let me look at my sins again. Oh, that's so I can record like voiceovers and stuff, or whatever I need to record beforehand onto my Mac and for QLab. Then also backstage monitors. A quick way to do that, also like the records, is just go to Mix Minus and press backstage monitors. Don't select any input channels, and now everything's going there. Although you might want to not send the audience mics to backstage monitors. It probably doesn't matter too much. And then, so I'm looking at my sins again. Foldback, usually I just send the handheld Q&A mics, and then playback maybe down a little bit, just so they can kind of hear it, but not so it's super loud or anything. I don't send like play on music or VOGs. I don't send to the stage. But the Zoom caller, yes, I'll put that as 0 for fallback monitors on stage. All right, so we've done all our sends. Next thing is I'm going to do inserts. So I'm going to go to the rack. So this is somewhat Yamaha specific, but we're putting in. Usually start with a 16-channel auto mixer, and then I go to the effects rack. I'm not using any effects normally. I'll take the first one. I'll do 8-band parametric. 8-band parametric. That gives me 4 8-band parametrics for the 4 vocal mic subgroups, and then I'll do. This is a matter of taste or whatever. I'll put either a Flex 15, depending on which console it is. I'll put a 31-band EQ as well. So I'll just, sometimes I feel like, okay, I'm just going to use the 31-band EQ because something's bothering me, So I'll put those in. And then in the premium rack, this is also Yamaha specific. I'll show you where I'm putting. I'll actually insert these and show you where I'm putting them and why and so forth. I'll put some dynamic EQs. I'll do this stereo bus comp, which is like a SSL compressor. I put that on the record mix, and then I'll put in a couple of primary source enhancers. What else do I do? I think that's about it. Okay, and then I'll do the inserts on those. So if I go back to the Dugan, I'll insert all my mics first. So I'm just starting on channel 1 of the Dugan, and I'm just going through each channel of the Dugan and inserting my microphones on insert 1. This is all the wireless, then the podium mic, and then now I'm going to do a whole different thing. I'm going to the Zoom call also. The Zoom caller is in the Dugan. I'm doing another thing I'll show you later with the Dugan and the audience mics. And then these EQs are for the vocal mic subgroups. So I start with this one. I do insert 1 on mix 1, 2, 3, and 4. Mix 1, 2, 3, 4. Close, and then you can see up here all my those parametrics are inserted on the podium, lav, handheld, head mic subgroups. Then I'm going to do the same thing with the graphics. And this, so now I'm chewing up all these insert slots. So there's some stuff, you know, like I'm going to run out. And, you know, like I might want to do, what was, I forget what, so I've got the Dugan. So if I want to do a Dugan and dynamic EQ and a primary source enhancer, I don't have enough slots to do all that, right? I can't do it. So that's, sometimes I kind of want that, you know, and I just can't. Even with the, even if I do it on the subgroups, if I'm using a parametric and a graphic, sometimes I'll just get rid of the graphic and use something else that I want, you know, like the primary source enhancer. So I'll put the primary source in. I had been putting the primary source enhancer on the subgroup just because I feel like it's needed more for the PA than for the recording, and I feel like the dynamic EQ is needed for both. Like if somebody's getting right on the podium mic, you want the dynamic EQ on the recording too.
Which sometimes that's why it's useful to have your recording on matrix, but also the primary source enhancer is handy for the recording in instances where you'd want to have something similar to cedar or dance.
Right.
Maybe
Gotcha.
drums or
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. So like you got to like kind of juggle things. So then and I have the graphics there because I find the parametrics sort of clunky to get around on this console anyway. You know, like you have to like especially the QL, you have to select the knob and then turn the touch and turn. It's slow to get around.
For having the iPad, it's really
So,
quicker with the
oh really? That's true. You know, I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, it's easy to do this. You know, rather than like this and then like find the okay, which one? Wait, okay, you know, and then you know.
You accidentally tap the cube instead of the gain on there.
Yeah, yeah. It seems more time consuming to do that. So and then yeah, and so I'm patching these graphics on insert 2 on those same mixes. All right, and then you can see they're inserted there. I'm going to remove this. And then this one, I'm going to put the dynamic EQ. I'm just going to use those on the podium mic because that's usually where they're. Actually, no, I'll use them on the 2 handheld mics and the podium mic. Right, so now you can see I've inserted dynamic EQ on RF7 and 8 and podium. And I'll show you how I set up the dynamic EQ also. I have a specific way I do it. So I set it for, there's two bands. And I set the first band for low shelf, 300 hertz. So this is where proximity effect happens, like kind of below 300 hertz. I set the ratio to 2:1, and I put the threshold at like 12 o'clock, and then adjust as needed once they start talking into it. That's where I start with that. And then the other one is like for de-essing, or like if somebody's like really nasally or has really screechy or something like that. I'll put the Q around in the middle, and then this could end up being anywhere, you know, from 1.5K to 4K, I guess. And I also put the ratio at 2, and I'll leave the threshold kind of high and just use it if I need it. That's kind of what I do with that. That could also be a de-esser too. I think it works better as a de-esser than the other de-esser. And then I put the bus comp. I put on the stereo insert on the stereo, and then the primary source enhancer. I have no place where I have no place to put this. I want to put it on the podium mics, but I'm at a, so I'd have to probably just put it on the podium subgroup instead of the graphics, right? That's probably what I should do. So insert to podium subgroup, done. All right, that's it. And then for the primary source enhancer, this is how I've been setting it, like kind of like that, and this at like kind of -10. Can you see that? Does that seem like a reasonable setting for primary source enhancer? Generally, I know I'll like time constant is in the middle, threshold somewhere between here and here, depth usually around -10. What? This is on the subgroup, so yeah, I might have to set the threshold low if I'm on the subgroup, right? Because you were saying because of gain, I'll probably have to set the threshold low on this. And the depth I have at -10. Is that too aggressive? A bit much, yeah. So I guess it depends on what kind of issues you're dealing with. Yeah, it gets noticeable. Well, I guess it depends on what issues you're dealing with. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I think the cedar or the dance will be, it's very, very transparent. You don't really notice it. Yeah. Well, we might get some kind of cedar thing. I don't know. I'm trying to at least get that. All right, so now we've done all our inserts. I'm just going to show you this other thing that I've been experimenting with, and it seems to work all right. And so I think I create another subgroup that's going to be a mix minus. So I'm actually out of subgroups. So the mono mix is going to be a subgroup. I'm going to make that a mix minus. Can you do mix minus with the mono? No, you can't. Okay. So this mono is going to be a mix minus. I'm going to send everything to it, except the audience mics. Let's see. Okay. So this is a quick way to do this, but not the audience mics. All right, so the mono subgroup is now a mix minus, and I'm going to put, and that's not going anywhere. I'm not going to send that anywhere, nowhere at all. Okay, I'm just going to put that in. I'm going back to the Dugan, and I'm going to insert. The mono mix on a channel of the Dugan, and I'm going to insert the audience mics on a channel of the Dugan, 2 channels of the Dugan, right? Okay, so I've got these, and if you press this, you get a bigger view of the Dugan. There's more settings here. What I'm doing now is I'm putting those in a separate Dugan group. So there's, oops, wrong ones. Yeah. So mono, audience, audience. So that mono mix minus of everything except the audience mics is in a separate group with the audience mics, right? So now, there's nothing plugged into it, so it's not going to do anything. but I'm going to have my audience mics up, and I'm just going to leave them up all the time. And I've just been experimenting with this. I don't know how well it really works. But I'm just going to leave them up all the time. And so now, when somebody's speaking on the stage, the audience mics are being ducked. If anything is happening, if there's a video roll, if there's somebody speaking on stage, the audience mics are ducking down. So you can do this with a compressor and set it for a sidechain ducking, right? Same thing, but I kind of feel like maybe it'll work better with the Dugan, and I think it does kind of work. It's like I started doing this on that Harvard show, and when I listened back, I was like, wow, it sounds really natural. Like I don't hear anything going on. Yeah, the sidechain stuff is kind of a hassle, but but the thing is, if you do that sidechain thing with the compressor, you kind of have to really figure out the time like the attack and release times to get it to sound natural. With this, it's already got the algorithm that makes it sound natural. You know what I mean? So I'm making I make a subgroup or a mix. I make a mix minus. That's everything except the audience mics. And then I put that mix minus and the two audience mics, or however many audience mics, into the Dugan on their own Dugan group. So it's basically like it's a whole separate auto mixer that's independent of everything else that's happening there, right? So it's like two independent auto mixers. So this is going to make my audience mics basically duck when anything else is happening and come back in when there's a pause and the audience laughs. And it'll always be like, if they're laughing and somebody's talking at the same time, if it's the same volume, you'll hear both, So it's doing the Dugan thing, So I think it works. Mm-hmm. I didn't do that. That's a good point. You must do this. When you insert the Dugan, it has to be post fader. So you go here, you go apply to all input, post. Now the 16-channel auto mixer is post fader. I don't know if everybody knows Dugan needs to be post fader, must be post fader. I mean, well, it doesn't have to be, but you're gonna have to do all kinds of crazy. Your results will be terrible. So yeah, so make sure you do that. So then whatever your other insert is also going to be post fader, unfortunately, which is, again, Rivage has two. It has. Rivage has two. Rivage has two insert slots that can be independently set to pre or post, and each slot you can chain up to 4 inserts. So you can have eight plugins on each channel, and they can be in groups of 4 to different places in the input channel. Yeah. So thank you. That's definitely right. Okay. I see we have partial recall safe going here. What is that all about? I want to just clear everything. Oh, it is. Okay. So one thing I kind of realized about that trick is the stereo mix. Since those left and right are being Dugan mixed independently, you can't link Dugan channels. You can get some weird ping-ponging left and right. So if you really, to really do it right, you actually have to make a second mix minus. So you just duplicate this same mix minus twice, and then you do 2 Dugan groups, one for the left and one for the right. And then you won't have that ping-ponging if that's even a thing. But I did it exactly this way for that Harvard show, and I didn't hear anything weird going on. But when I've been on shows with this going, I look at the Dugan and I see it's going like this. I'm like, oh, that might sound weird, you know, but I haven't actually heard it. So it seems like if you really want to do it right, you kind of got to do, like, even if, so you only need two Dugan groups to do it, even if you have more than 2 audience mics. So you have everything that's panned to the left on one Dugan group, everything that's panned to the right on the other Dugan group. That's how you would do it.
But those aren't assigned anywhere, they're not going out.
Well, the audience mics are assigned, but that mix minus that's controlling the Dugans, that's ducking them, that's going nowhere. It's only on the Dugan. Yeah, it's not going to any buses or any outputs at all. It's like if you look at this. Yeah, I would just, and I've kind of taken to start doing this. Since we were doing virtual shows and we had so much routing going all over the place, I've been using the on-off buttons on the routing. If I'm not sending it someplace, I turn it off, and then you can immediately see, you know, because some channels are only going to 1 or 2 things, and they're not going to the mix or whatever. And this makes it so you can instantly see where stuff is going. I've been using the on-off buttons, and that's been helpful. Yeah. Oh, it's 11:30. Let's break for coffee and